Hey, hello everyone. I think I'm connected. I'm back from my travels. I was in Poland teaching. It was a very good experience. So we'll be starting in less than a minute. Just waiting for the clock to turn over. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so welcome. I'm back again. I'm going to give a talk today about the concept of middle path, which is a very important concept and has a number of applications, and I'm going to talk about at least 4 of them. The first time the Buddha used the term middle path, Majjhima Patipada, was in his very first sermon. It's actually the very first teaching he gave before he even pronounced the Four Noble Truths. He spoke a preamble about the middle way, or the middle path between the extremes of sensual indulgence and ascetic mortification of the body. And he of course knew what he was speaking of, since he had experienced both of those extremes in his previous life. He'd been raised in great luxury and indulged with every kind of sense pleasure possible for the first 20 plus years of his life. And then he made his great renunciation and went into the wilderness and followed the normal Indian approach of the day, which was extreme asceticism. And he actually took it to a very great extreme of starving himself, for example, with extreme fasting. And he came to the conclusion that both of these extreme methods were not conducive to liberating the mind, either indulging heedlessly in the pleasures of the senses, or punishing the body with self-mortification. So he, on the night of his enlightenment, before he embarked on that project, he was offered and received a bowl of milk rice and ate it. And seeing this, his companions, the 5 wanderers who would attach themselves to him as their leader, they saw that and they were disgusted. They said, Gautama has reverted to luxury, and they left him. They later he won them back, and they became the first 5 bhikkhus. But this is the first meaning of middle path. The Buddhist approach is to neither seek sense pleasures nor to punish the body, but to live in a calm, equanimous way. And to followers of either of the extremes, the approach of the Buddhist bhikkhus seemed to be closer to the opposite side. Those who were indulging in the senses would see the bhikkhus as being punishing themselves by refraining from those things, whereas the extreme ascetics, like the followers of Naganta Nataputta, or we call them the Jains, they said that the bhikkhus were robed laymen and living in the luxury of indulgence. So this is the first meaning of middle path, and the one that the Buddha was actually the very first teaching of the Buddha. And another application of middle path is in terms of view. The right view is the middle way between eternalism and annihilationism, sattvada and uchedavada. And this is characterized by the Buddha as represented by the dependent origination. This is the philosophical application of middle path, middle way. Eternalism is the view that there is a eternal soul essence, or in Indian terms an Atman, that resides in every being, and is an unchanging essence that passes from life to life. Eternalism often goes along, almost always goes along with the concept of a creator God. Uchedavada, literally annihilationism, is really what we would call today materialism, philosophical materialism, or physicalism. The idea that there is no reality beyond matter and energy, or in the older language would be matter in motion. And there were followers of this idea in ancient India, such as the Ajivakas, who held that when a person dies, the elements return to their place, the earth to the earth, the air to the air, etc., and the consciousness is simply extinguished. The Buddha explicitly cited the dependent origination as the middle way between these two extremes. And this is really the basic paticca samuppada, the basic dependent arising, that simply states that because of this, that arises, this ceasing, that ceases. In other words, a statement of causality. In Abhidhamma language, nothing arises without a cause, and nothing arises from a single cause. So there's a philosophic reliance on the idea of cause and effect. And the Buddhist objection to the two extreme views, which in the world seem to be polar opposites, and often have been historically, very critical of each other. From the Buddhist point of view, they both share the salient error of negating cause and effect, or causality, at some point in their thinking. For the eternalists, everything has to trace back to a first cause, which is God, and the will of God is essentially unknowable and arbitrary. So in the language of Aristotle, he is the causeless cause. So the law of cause and effect is violated by the concept of a original creator God. As for the Theravadins and materialists, their thinking falls back in the end on randomness. They can explain, or they try to explain, and in modern times, with the modern science, they've been quite successful. They can explain the how of things, how things work, but they don't even regard the asking the question why as a valid question. So they always fall back on an arbitrary answer. That's just the way things are. Now, one way these different views can be illustrated is in the case of the innate characteristics of a human being at birth. Some people are born more intelligent, some less intelligent, some good looking, some ugly, some strong, some weak. And there's some extreme cases of people born with serious birth defects. Now, if you're taking the eternalist view, you basically have to say that God doled these characteristics out. So that it's hard to escape the idea that God is a moral monster if he decides such and such a person will be born with Down syndrome, say, or some other serious problem. As for the materialist or scientific view, they might be able to explain the mechanism by which the genetic code is damaged and causes a person to be born with a birth defect. But for them, it's an irrelevant question or a meaningless question to ask why did this person has to suffer this type of birth, and another person has a very fortunate and healthy birth. Whereas dependent origination, the view of cause and effect, which takes into account karma and the chain of consciousness stretching over lifetimes, would say there must be some karmic component to the characteristics of a person at birth. They're born in certain ways because of the karma they made in previous lifetimes. So nothing escapes the net of cause and effect. So that becomes the philosophical middle view. There was an essay written by Maurice Walsh about this, about the middle path of views, and he had a very I think evocative image. He said, "There's an optical illusion if you have a perfectly round lake and there's an island in the middle of the lake. Someone standing on the north shore of the lake would see the island as close to the southern shore. If you cross around to the southern shore, the island appears to be close to the northern shore." And he said this happens in the world with followers of either eternalism or annihilationism looking at the Buddhist teachings. They see it as close to the other side. The eternalists see Buddhism as being an atheistic philosophy, not much different than the hardcore materialism. And this was actually explicitly the criticism of, I remember some time ago I think it was in the Catholic Church, I think it was 2 popes ago, that they came out with a encyclical about the errors of Buddhism, and they said that Buddhism is, amongst other things, is nihilistic. So this, that's the eternalist view. And if you take the materialist view, they look at Buddhism and they see it as it's not much different than any other religion. It's all hocus pocus and magical thinking. And we see these, one way we see this tension between eternalism and annihilationism within Buddhism itself is in views about nibbana. Nibbana is ultimately indescribable because it is the only factor that's outside of cause and effect. It's unconditioned. But from the very beginning up until the present day, it's been very common for Buddhist thinkers to lean a little to one side or the other. That the middle path view is very difficult to maintain. It's like walking on a razor's edge. So we have some descriptions of nibbana as a kind of a eternal bliss state, and we have other views of nibbana as total annihilation of consciousness and perception. So it's best to actually leave the question kind of unanswered about the nature of nibbana, because it is outside of the realm of logical discourse, and attempts to pin it down will always end up leaning to one side or the other of that middle path. A third way we can apply the concept of middle path is in the balancing of various mental faculties or factors, and there's at least two lists of factors given by the Buddha that involve this concept. One is the list of the seven bojjhangas, the enlightenment factors that have division into energizing factors and calming factors. And the Buddha gave this teaching in the context of the fire sermon. He used the analogy of keeping the mind on a steady middle path with maintaining a steady fire. If you're trying to keep a fire going at a steady, even keel, you don't, if it's starting to die down and become weak, you don't throw on a bunch of dry or wet grass and green sticks. But if it's blazing up out of control, you don't throw on dry sticks and straw. You throw on the dry sticks and straw onto a fire that's dying to energize it, and you throw the wet grass and the green sticks onto a fire that's blazing out of control, and you want to damp it down. So he gives us these seven factors that we balance. And in the middle is sati, or mindfulness, that is required in all circumstances, and keeps an eye on the other factors to keep them in balance. The other list is the five faculties, which follows a similar kind of idea, with sati or mindfulness in the middle. And there's two pairs that balance each other, and you could call them the inner and outer pairs. The inner pair has a very immediate practical application to meditation, and that is samadhi and virya. Okay? The focus or stability of the mind versus the energy of the mind. And a lot of meditation skill in meditation is balancing those two. If the mind is dull, sleepy, and you're tending to fall into this dull states of consciousness, that's an over development of samadhi without the balancing factor of energy. And at such a time, it's advised to energize the mind. So not trying to get more concentrated, but energizing the mind with such things as walking meditation or meditating with eyes open, etc. Whereas if the mind is restless and there's a twitchiness of body and thought, then what's required is more samadhi. And the real cure for restlessness is stillness, to force yourself to sit still and not move, and even if it's difficult, that's the way to overcome restlessness. And then the outer pair are more applicable to the general attitude rather than specific moment-to-moment practice. And this pair is panya and sada. Panya is wisdom, and in this application, it refers to especially the aspect of discriminating wisdom. And sada is faith or confidence. And it's very important to have a balance of these two. If sada is strong, but there's no discriminating wisdom to guide it, it becomes superstition or dogmatism. And if discriminating wisdom is strong, but there's no faith to moderate it, then the mind becomes very dry and cynical. And in the words of one discourse, the Buddha said that this leads to the vice of cunning, which is as difficult to cure as a disease caused by medicine. So we have these two applications of balancing factors, calming and energizing factors. And in the middle is sati. And this brings me to the fourth and the last application that I want to cover today is within the meaning of sati itself. Sati is generally translated as mindfulness. It's older translation was recollectedness, which I think is actually, though it's an awkward sort of word, it's actually, I think, closer to the real intended meaning. And it's allied to the factor of equanimity. For sati to be strong, the mind must be equanimous. And there's a particular aspect of equanimity that is called Tatramajatata, which is in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, he translates it as specific neutrality, which is quite good. It captures the meaning well, but a very literal breakdown of the word is a compound word. It would mean the state of being in the middle about that. And the tatra is an emphatic, pointing kind of word. So this is the specific aspect. And Majja Tata is the state of being in the middle. And this applies very much to development of insight, of vipassana, that the mind has to hold itself in the middle. So when things arise in the mind, objects arise in the mind that have a tendency to sway the mind one way or the other, either into fear or fascination, attachment or revulsion. If someone is strong in Tatra Majatata, they just stay in the middle. They're not moved by whatever wonderful or terrible thing might occur in consciousness, but the mind just remains in the middle. And it remains in the middle about that, Tatra, which means the present object of consciousness. So it's not a vague, fuzzy kind of neutrality. It's a mind that's fully alert and awake and clear about what is the present moment object, but it stays in the middle. It's not shifted or moved from its place by whatever may arise. So that's definitely being in the middle. You know? So there may be other applications of the concept of the middle path, but I think I've covered the main ones, and I'll stop there, and we'll have a look at the chat and see what people are asking about. Okay. Always interesting to me that they call a bowl of rice milk luxury. A reminder how being to either extremes skews one perception to the other side. Yes, definitely. Venerable, do Theravada monastics consider Mahayana monastics to be validly ordained but with wrong view? Or is the Nagantas called the early Buddhists more like robed lay disciples? That's a complex question, actually, because there is Vinaya lineages and Dhamma lineages, and they happen to coincide in the Theravada. We have a ordination lineage that we trace back, and it's always been associated with a particular interpretation of Dhamma. But the various Mahayana schools, they have Vinaya lineages that trace back to diverse early schools of Buddhism. For example, many of the Buddhists of East Asia, of China and Japan, trace their lineage back to the Dharmaguptakas, and many of, I think all of the Tibetans trace their lineage back to the Sarvastivadins. So these are valid lineages if they haven't been broken. Now there could be a problem that could occur also in Theravada lineages, that at some point they're broken by incorrect ordinations. A monk who's not a valid monk performs an ordination, then nobody that he ordains is valid either. And we really have no way of tracing it back and knowing for certain in any case. But I would say as far as the Mahayanas can trace their lineage back to one of the early schools, then that's a valid ordination. The next one, Samaditya right view is usually presented as the beginning and end of the path. Does that not mean intellectual understanding first and experiential? Does that mean intellectual understanding first and experiential understanding at the end? Yes, I would say that's a correct reading of it. That first you have to have a correct understanding simply on the cognitive level, the level of thought, as a basis, and then you come to validate it by experience. This is part of that balancing of saddha and panya. That the only real solid faith is one that's validated by experience. But to begin with, you don't have that experience. So you have to kind of take a leap of faith to start. And then you see, as you go along, you see, is this my initial understanding correct according to experience, or is it not? Ajahn, is it possible to know in the Pali when conditionality is being discussed as opposed to cause and effect? The ideas and assumptions are very different. Yeah, there are different Pali words. There's samudaya, which is used in the formula of dependent arising, which is because of X arising, then there is Y. So it's an direct expression of cause and effect. There's also cause can be called hetu or mula, and they all slightly different meanings. Hi Ajahn, glad you're back. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. Yeah, I've been back for a few days now, so I'm over my jet lag. About middle way, does restrained mindful indulgence lead to liberation? For example, drinking responsibly, enjoying sensual pleasures while mindfulness of not getting attached to them. Well, any consumption of alcohol is actually a violation of fifth precept. So I don't think any kind of indulgence leads one out of conditionality. What the indulgence in sensual enjoyment is not, as long as it's ethical in terms of, you know, the objects consumed are not stolen or obtained by fraud, etc. Now, it's not a violation of precept, and it's not unethical as such, but it does bind the mind to the kama bhumi, and it's a hindrance to liberation. NASA has taken photos from space of a phenomenon called sprites, or transient luminous events that are colorful electrical discharges which occur above thunderstorms. Could this light be the devas countering an asura attack? Now, who knows? Possibly. The devas, when they appear to humans, they first are seen as simply light, as brilliant light. So it may be that they're this is what's being seen. Do dogs and other intelligent animals experience and learn from kama in real time or via memory? Thanks. Well, I don't know if how many humans actually learn from experience. Dogs and, you know, I think you know, all kind of higher mammals, they have the capacity to learn, and they have memory, and they do have some capacity to make karma. It's more limited than in the human realm, because without speech they have no way of really grasping concepts. So it's more on an instinctual level. Next, is this statement true? An anagami can enjoy the taste of food or enjoy the beauty of nature or a cute animal, but not get attached to any of these. I would say yes, that even a Buddha or an Arahant or a Buddha can experience a pleasant sensation. The Buddha remarked about the beauty of his surroundings on some occasions. But there's what's missing, or what they have transcended, is any desire. So when a pleasant sense experience occurs, they experience it as pleasant sense experience, but they don't have attachment or desire for it. There's a story that Ajahn told. I was told this by one of our senior monks who got it from Ajahn, and it involves the Buddha and Ananda, but it doesn't appear to be in any canonical or commentarial source. So we don't know if Ajahn invented the story or whether it's a traditional Thai story. But the story is that the Buddha and Ananda were invited to a meal at some rich patron's house, and the food was of extremely rare and delicious quality. And Ananda, who's always had a kind of a weakness of sensuality, he was getting a little bit bewildered eating the food. He was trying to remain mindful, but the sense pleasure was kind of overwhelming him. And he saw the Buddha just eating very calmly. And he said to the Buddha, he said, it must be that the Tathagata, to the Tathagata, all food tastes the same. And the Buddha said, say not so, Ananda, say not so. I shall show you now how the Tathagata experiences taste. And he took a lump of half-chewed rice out of his mouth and gave it to Ananda and said, eat this. And Ananda puts it in his mouth, and he almost swoons from the overwhelming intensity of the taste sensation. And when he recovered himself, and the Buddha said to him, do you see, Ananda? This is how the Tathagata experiences food, but he is not swayed thereby. Next question. Which realm, not human, is the best that is most conducive to Nibbana if we cannot attain Nibbana in this life? Definitely to Sita heaven, because then you're in the presence of the Bodhisattva. So, everything's frozen. Okay, I'm back. Everything was frozen for a moment. I couldn't even read the chat. Okay. What is the best thing to do for a pet to try and get them born in a better realm with access to Dhamma in their next life? Will playing parrots in their presence help? Yeah, I think hearing Dhamma into playing parrots, chanting of paritas would be could have a conducive effect on animal consciousness, and there are a couple of examples of this from commentarial stories. There's one about the Buddha giving a discourse to a crowd of people, and a frog crawled out of a pond, and he could, of course, in his frog body and mind, he couldn't understand anything, but something in the tone of the Buddha's words moved him, and he crawled out of the pond to get closer, and somebody accidentally stepped on him and killed him. And he was immediately reborn as a Dewa in the Dewa realm. There's another story that in the time of Kassapa Buddha, there was a monk who lived in a cave, and part of his practice every day, he would walk up and down chanting passages from the Abhidhamma. And there were bats living in this cave, and they were affected by the sound of the monks chanting, with, of course, again, not understanding anything. And they eventually came to rebirth in the human realm as disciples of Sariputta. Would you say middle view also applies to philosophical perspectives of idealism versus realism? Oh, that's an interesting question. It's this whole dichotomy between idealism and realism. for those who aren't familiar with that, that's a really old, it's actually medieval philosophical division that has roots in Plato and Aristotle. And the names are kind of misleading if you don't know what they're referring to. It's realism is the view that abstract concepts like beauty or truth or justice are real. They have some kind of reality in the world. And idealism holds that they're just ideas in the mind, that they're just concepts. So that was Aristotle's. That goes back to Aristotle, and realism goes back to Plato and his view of forms. Yeah, and I say we could apply middle path to that. But those are two extreme ways of viewing things. That we don't have to go to the extreme of seeing Platonic forms as ultimately real. Nor do we have to go to an extreme of utterly denying any kind of sense for abstract concepts that definitely do have an application in the world. How does one know for sure one has attained stream entry? That would be by checking the mind for the three fetters. That's the traditional way. If you have attained stream entry, you will not have Sakaya Ditti, Silabhata Paramasa, and Vicikicca arising even momentarily in the mind. They're eliminated completely. The second part of your question is basically rephrasing the same. How do you validate the Nibbana moment when attaining stream entry from general deep meditative states like jhana? Yeah, that's you have to validate it retroactively. Like, did that purify my being from those fetters? Did you say presence of the Bodhisattva into heaven? Yes, the Bodhisattva, the coming Buddha, is presently residing in Tusita heaven. And many Asian Buddhists actually make aspiration to be reborn there so that they can be in the presence of the Bodhisattva. So it's definitely the most conducive realm for enlightenment other than the human realm. In some ways, it's better than the human realm. Okay, so I'll leave that for now, and I'll be back again next week. I'm going to miss one session in late July, but I'll be here for the next few weeks. Okay, thank you all, and I'll see you again.